Hey guys, how you doing? Coach Mitch here. Are those CBP panels really writing down what you say? Yeah. And then so the question is, what are they writing when we're speaking? Good question. First thing they're writing down is your communication style, of course, and can you clarify? This is what hurts people who come from the civilian background, which is most of us, right? Thinking they're going to get into another civilian type interview format. It's not that way. So when they ask you a question that's situational based with a law enforcement texture to it, shall we say, they're looking for you to answer that question as if you were working in law enforcement. It's a law enforcement question. Well, I often hear from my clients, well, Coach Mitch, that's not fair. Perhaps, but that's the rules, right? So we have to go up to that level, boom, and set the standard with them because they're not going to allow us to use a communication style that's weak, doesn't explain anything, and doesn't reflect the law enforcement understanding of their questions because you are there in front of what? A law enforcement panel. Now, many civilian type interviews, sometimes they don't talk, they don't write anything down at all. Just a talking conversation. Let's have a conversation. They talk and see how you are, whatever. And your vibe is good or your vibe is okay. And sometimes you get hired by your vibe in the civilian type interview. Not the same. Look at the circumstances. If they just hire you on a vibe and not through a qualification or through understanding who you really are, the impact of a rogue or bad CBPO officer or a BP agent can do damage to the country for a long time. Think about the fentanyl situation, right? If you as CBPO, you're at an international border and you're not paying attention, you're not doing your job, it can cause damage to thousands of people. It's not the same as if you were like a civilian type law enforcement officer. Yes, they too can do damage, but the numbers are so minuscule in comparison to what you could do damage-wise at a CBPO level to the country. This is why your communication must be clear when they ask you these questions. That's what they're writing down. Every single word you say, they are writing it down. Why? Because you have competition that day. They don't have to take you and only you. You got a lot of competition. Everybody knows this already. It is competition field at its most. A lot of people there are trying for the same occupation you're trying for. In that also, what they're also writing down is your emotional control. There are questions specifically designed in my coaching program that I know they use also that reflect your emotional control. How do you handle a situation without getting into emotions, right? Civilian type interviews, sometimes you are rewarded for showing this awesome emotional ability to talk to people, to reflect, blah, 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 right? Not the same for the CBP interview. These are emotional control type questions that see if you actually have a control of your emotions, meaning what? Emotional maturity. There are questions specifically designed for that to reflect out of you, to filter out of you. Can you handle these kind of situations at an emotional level? They don't want a civilian type mindset in that situation. Now you're probably thinking, well, Coach Mitch, it's the interview. Why it's so hard? Because they are judging you as if you are already law enforcement. That's how they see you. They don't see you as Joe Schmo, the civilian trying to get a job. No, they see you already as one of them. Yeah, not fair? Yep, you're right, it's not fair. So what does that mean? It means you must come up to the situation and give it your best from that level. You cannot walk in there as Mr. and Mrs. Civilian. Big one here is decision structures. A lot of you guys are going into that STAR format. It's not going to get you there. CBP is not designed for the STAR format. FBI, yeah, you can start your way with some of those questions for sure, but not the CBP. CBPO and BP, you don't want to bring STAR there in an overt way. Yes, STAR is used sometimes in a covert way, which I teach you how to use it. I don't even use the S&T anymore. I stopped using that years ago. I just use the action and the result, and we go from there. That's how I teach it. So your decision structure has to sound correct. Like a lot of people already know. I always say to them, there's going to be 6 or 7 or 8 points in your answer, meaning in your answer to me, you must hit those points. Otherwise, it's not going to reflect good for you in the actual interview. That makes sense to you? You've hit the points, and your decision structure has to make sense. I had a client a year ago. She kind of laughed. She said when she got done with the interview with them, they asked her a question, which is very rare, but they said to her, "How long have you been in the military?" She's not military. She never was military. That just shows the efficacy of my coaching program. You have to understand that you're going to have certain decisions you must make within the interview that make sense to them. That is what structure. Well, why the structure? Because it's a structured interview, of course, right? That's why they're asking you these questions in that way. This is why 60% of people do not pass the SI, the structured interview, because they're walking in there thinking they're going to hear stuff like, where will you be in 5 years? What is your strength and what's your weakness? It doesn't happen that way. I've been teaching this for 7 years. Not once has any panel ever said to any of my clients, where are you going to be in 5 years? It doesn't happen that way. I've been coaching for too long. I know what they're going to ask. I know how you should answer it. Now, do I have the exact questions? No. But my questions are good enough that my folks can pass the interviews with flying colors, because it's practice, 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 and understanding where you are and understanding how to answer a question in a decision structure format. Another one too, another point. Ownership of the language. This is a heavy one in my coaching program. You may start my coaching program as a civilian, thinking like a civilian, but you're not going to end up that way. You're going to be someone who can assimilate into the actual coaching program, right? And then assimilate into the actual coaching interview with flying colors, because you have to understand. You have to understand how to speak to this panel in front of you. They're not going to speak like civilians because they're not civilians. They are a paramilitary group of men and women up there who don't have time or the patience for you to sit there and blah, blah your way through answers. They're going to cut you short and get you out of there. People who come back to me when they failed the first time on their own say, gee, my interview was short, only 1 or 2 questions. Should be 4 questions. The reason why it usually gets cut short is because they don't have time for you, and they're not going to spend time for you because you're wasting their time. You didn't prepare properly. You walked in there to this interview, LEO interview, right? Federal level, paramilitary, with thinking you're going to hear about, hey, here's my degree. I got GPA 5.9. I was magna cum, whatever. No one cares about that. Situational questions, and they want structured answers from you. I cannot make that more simple. I'm trying to stop you guys from getting deferred off for 6 months, because if you don't pass an interview, come back in 6 months. They don't care. They don't feel bad about that. They're looking at you as a future partner to them in the field. If you can't answer these basic questions to them, well, then they're not basic. If you can't answer these paramilitary type questions that you're looking for, how can you ever succeed as a reliable partner in the field? You can't. It's not going to happen. And they know this. This is why they say to you, come back in 6 months, have a good day. Civilians always kill me here too. They get into the storytelling type scenarios. Storytelling is for one portion of the Secret Service, not for CBP or BPA. It's not storytelling, it's mission focus type behaviors. That's what they're looking for. They don't want to hear about you talking about this and that and going on and droning on. They don't want to hear that, and they're not going to have the patience for that. I'm telling you right now, you guys, stop all the storytelling, because no one's going to be interested in your storytelling. You have to understand that your answers must be mission focused. Well, what's the mission, Coach Mitch? The mission we go over time and time again in my coaching program. Once you understand what the mission is, you're going to understand what the answers are going to be. That's how that works. You know, people always over-explain, and they get into this called the babbling complex, right? And you're babbling because you don't know what the heck you're talking about, so you're trying to cover up a bunch of babble. These are not civilians you're talking to. These people are in uniform, the weapon on, badge on, radio on, and they're there for serious business with you. They're not going to spend time with you as a civilian who didn't prepare themselves, right? Now, if you guys are serious about this, you can always get into my coaching program, description down below, get into my calendar, and we can get this thing going for you. I have a 90.4% success rate for 7 years. There's a reason why that is, because my coaching program works. Oh, what about the investment? Yeah, the tiny investment for 20, 25 years of a career. That's on you, of course, either way. So back to the babbling. When I ask you questions in my first interview, I come across a lot of babbling because people tell me all the time, God, dog it, man, I thought this was going to be a civilian type interview, you know? And I say, no, well, does my degree count? It counts later on for your GS or GL ranking. It has no bearing whatsoever in the interview process, not even at all. You guys, this is not a civilian interview. This is a federal panel you're talking to, a federal panel LEO type people. You know, this is how that works. It's I assessed, I reviewed, I saw. You can't do stuff like that, right? Red flags on this panel. You're going to shoot out a lot of red flags if you don't come there with your stuff together. Rambling all the time. Every time people ramble, those interviews get cut short. Come back in 6 months when you're really ready for this career, if at all. Because a full 48% of people who don't make the interview the first time, they never come back, right? 52% do. Of that, I get 32% who come to see me to pass the interview the right way. I get people who pass the interview all the time in my email box, all the time. That's what I want for you. Now, another thing too is in the interview for civilians, you're trying to impress, right? A civilian interview compared to this federal level LE interview is like a cakewalk. It's easy. You can do it in your sleep when you compare the stresses you're to go through in this federal level interview. It is pure stress. It makes you think hard. It worries you because there's so much writing on this interview. Why? Because the interview part is one of the few things you actually have control over in the whole process. You don't control the medical. You don't control the physical. You don't control none of that. You only control the interview portion at the most extreme. Maybe 80% of that is up on you and how you perform. The rest, no, the rest is not up on you at all. That's how that works. Now, I want to tell you too is that instead of rambling, they want to hear you demonstrate good judgment. I talk about this all the time. We have to have good judgment in our answers. We got to know what we're talking about, right? So then here we go. The way you learn about decision making, emotional maturity, mission focused. The way you learn those is through repetition. I show you this, how to add these answers into their questions. When they ask you, I show you how to do that. This is why this works, because it's effective, because it takes you out of that civilian mindset, which you don't want to bring in the first place anyway. It brings you directly in front of them with a prepared type behavioral stance, right? Because you sit there, but you're ready for the answers, you know, and boom, 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 you know, and you have your answers already ready because you know what's coming at you. You know how to prepare yourself. You know how to sit. You know how to dress. You know what your background should be. You know all that stuff, okay? That's how this works, all right? So you must think clearly. If you really want to be CBPO, think about what you're doing. Coach Mitch, I don't need to come to you. That's okay. Whatever you do, practice, and practice. You need to understand this is serious business. It's no joke. If you want to wait 6 months, that's fine too. No problem at all. Don't pass the first time. Come back in 6 months. That's okay. You can do that. But I'm showing you now how to join my group of people who passed at a 90.4% success rate the first time. I've got the receipts. 7 years of doing this. I know what I'm doing. CBP, BP, if you're serious about that, description down below. Get into my calendar and let's start you on your path to your new career. Today's Sunday. I know you're fretting about going to work on Monday, right? Oh gosh, another Monday. I gotta go to bed late because I don't want to go Monday. No. When you're done feeling that way, when you're tired of feeling that way, you want to go to something where you're proud of, where you're actually protecting your country. Down below in the description, get into my calendar. You guys take care. Bye-bye.